the opening, The World's Gone Mad. I mean, I wrote The World's Gone Mad because it was doing, and Dave kind of jumped on that and said that should be the first thing that's heard on this record. You know, that should be a statement, and it's, you know, straight out of the box. That should be the first thing that's said. And I think he was right, and so that was why The Invisible Man started the album, because of a desire to make that a mission statement right at the beginning. But that feeling of losing touch and becoming dislocated from culture is something that had started to happen to me a few years ago. And I wrote those words in Amsterdam years ago. I was just wandering around the city on my own, and I felt very removed from everything that was going on. And it's probably a thing that middle-aged men start to feel. They feel like the world has changed around them and not for the better, and they don't quite understand. And, you know, I remember my old man saying, "Oh, the world's going to the devil," you know, and it's not like it was in the old days, you know. Everything was so much better and people were happier. And so I think you get to a point in your life where you start to think, what's going on with the young people, you know? Why are they listening to all this racket? And I think every generation has thought that since the dawn of time. So I try to guard against it. Nonetheless, I do feel it. When you've got half of all the youth culture listening to yo motherfucker music, you know, by guys who wear guns as a fashion accessory, I don't know that that's got to be. I mean, any way you look at it, it's not a good thing. And I just don't really get that rap hip-hop thing. I just don't get it. But maybe it's because I'm too much of a musician, and I expect tunes, and I expect interesting chord changes, and I expect movement. It's like if you've spent your whole life learning how to paint or draw, and then you know, an entire generation of kids start just putting stripes on canvas and calling that art, and millions of people buy it and call it genius, then you start to feel like you're losing the plot big time. You go, but it's just stripes. And I feel a bit like that about rap and hip hop. It's just rhythm, and it's just rhythm and talking, isn't it? You know, there ain't a tune in it. It doesn't move me. How the hell are you supposed to be moved by that? You know. But anyway, quite apart from youth culture and music and TV and just, you know, everything else, I did start to feel like I was becoming removed and nothing made sense to me anymore. You know, the world's gone mad, I've lost touch. I shouldn't admit it, you know, but I have, you know. How did this happen? You know, it's like that line in that great Joe Walsh song, everybody's so different, I haven't changed. You know, pure genius. And sometimes I have that feeling that I haven't changed at all, and everyone else has, you know, everything else has. So I'm rambling a bit, but then that's my job. The Invisible Man's about becoming dislocated, and it's about vanishing and ceasing to exist, and yet continuing to witness everything and be aware and to feel pain and injustice and be completely impotent to do anything about it. And that's happened to me on a number of levels over the years, some of which I want to talk about and some of which I don't. But you know, in some sense, we've all become invisible men with the increasing awareness through modern media of you know, and globalization and what's going on in the world. And the fact that you can turn on your TV and discover that someone's been murdered in Australia or Indonesia, or that the Twin Towers just collapsed in New York. You're so conscious of injustice all the time. But it's injustice at such a vast distance from you that, you know, in the real world, in a non-media, just caveman world, you'd never know. And so, as human beings, we're just this species that hasn't had time to evolve beyond, really. We just haven't had the time to evolve much beyond cavemen in terms of what we are, and yet we have to deal with all this stuff that we're just not wired up to cope with. We have to be able to deal with knowing that some baby was born with no legs in Tokyo yesterday, and we therefore, it hurts us, and we therefore feel somehow responsible for it. And isn't there something we can do? And shouldn't we collect some money? And what about the famine in Ethiopia? And what about Rwanda? And what about Iraq? What about the Jews and the Arabs? Jesus, what are we going to do about that? And so we spend our days in this quandary of confusion, because we witness things that we just really shouldn't be able to witness anyway, but we can. And that's not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's good that collectively the world is having to become responsible for the whole planet instead of just its own backyard. But it is a strain on us all. And in that sense, we're all invisible men, because we witness so much that we can't actually affect or help. Songs about that, and it's specifically about witnessing one other person's life and being very conscious of that and being powerless to help. But then there's an undercurrent of all kind of other things in it, some of which are, some are metaphors, some are specific incidents from my own life, little things that touched me that no one's ever going to understand. But I just throw them in anyway, because what the hell? I'm a songwriter, that's my luxury, I can always have... it's a bit like Alfred Hitchcock always putting a cameo appearance in the movies, I feel a bit like that with the songs. I sometimes just pop one thing purely for myself in there that no one's ever likely to, what? Close behind you, Instant Stephen, what? Well, I know exactly what that is. And I don't need to explain those things, really. And they wouldn't be any more interesting if I did. So the Invisible Man is about impotence and about dislocation, about frustration, about empathy. Frustrated empathy, I suppose.